Let's get to this draft. And I think what we'll do is I'm going to kick it off because I want to talk about the overall draft first of all. But I think somebody should represent the Raiders for the young in there because I think they had a
I
fantastic
will.
draft myself. Once I started looking at it, I was like, dang, these dudes went. They really did good, you know. So anyway, like,
I'll talk about them.
go ahead.
I'll talk
Go
about
ahead.
the Raiders. The Raiders, if you actually look at it, they picked up some good defensive pieces, and what they had to do. If you actually look at it, they got a couple of steals, especially from Bama, the young kid. He's a, I feel he's a steal. Um, you've seen him play this year. Man, that kid was doing a lot of things that propped him up. I know he didn't go too far, but he should make a difference in that defense. Also, the number one pick that they got, man, that dude is a monster. Of course, I just heard today. I didn't know, but I didn't know he was getting surgery, guys. That's something new that you guys were telling me. Is that in my head? Does that affect the Raiders? Because you know how they always say the first pick. Ah, man, they haven't had a lot of good first picks in the last couple of seasons. So I feel they did have a good draft this year. They also picked up who was the other guy?
Mayer from Notre Dame.
Oh, the tight end.
Right
Tight end
in.
that was supposed to go to Dallas.
So the person he's talking about first round was Tyree Wilson. That was the guy that had surgery who got hurt. Michael Myers, who Efren's talking about right now, though, from Notre Dame, who was the number one consensus blocking tight end to come out of the draft. He was the best.
They say that is the next Gronk. How
Yeah,
big he is, how he blocks. Yes, he can catch too, but he's there for his blocking. His blocking is tremendous, especially when he was playing at Notre Dame. And then the young kid is from Bama.
Byron Young.
Byron Young. He played what?
Byron Young. Defensive tackle. Defensive tackle.
He's a nose tackle, basically. He'll probably be. He's not a true nose tackle, but I'm sure they'll have him gain a little bit of weight, and then he'll probably be a nose tackle in the league.
And like I said, they're bulking up. They're bulking up that side, that defense, and they need another tight end because they let go of Waller. They let him go to New York, so that was a good pickup for
the Giants. Yeah,
but let's say I have to say this: you guys got to remember who's going to be the starting quarterback this year. I know we're talking about the draft, and now they got the tight end, and they're getting the run game going. No quarterback there too, so I think they should have.
Are you saying
that kid from Auburn is there? He knows the system. He didn't do horribly bad.
You talking about the Raiders, Efren?
Yeah.
You say they have no QB because you're saying Garoppolo is going to be hurt, or are you forgetting about him?
No, Garoppolo said that he might not be ready by their. So I don't know if you heard about that contract that they signed.
That's why I'm asking, because I'm saying they have a QB, but
I don't think he's going to be there. I don't think he's going to be there.
They actually have two guys underneath Garoppolo, but the third guy had no playing time at all whatsoever since he came into the league. So.
They drafted Aiden O'Connell, so he's supposed to be the backup, the Purdue guy from it. But
that's right. They did, didn't they? That's right. They did draft a quarterback.
Yeah, he's like a gunslinger too. But
yeah,
they paid Jimmy a lot of money, and he.
Well, they sure did. Yeah, just to see if he can play.
The draft, but like you guys said, the draft that they got, they did. Let's be honest, everybody. They had a good draft. We gotta admit it this year. The people who were doing the scouting, they picked the needs that they needed. I feel that guy Myers, you said his name is
Michael Myers.
Wilson.
Mayer.
Wilson. I'm talking about Wilson.
Mayer. It's Mayer. It might be Mayer. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Wilson, the D tackle or the DN.
Byron Young. Yeah.
No, the other one, the first round pick.
Oh, you're talking about Tyree Wilson.
Yeah. I feel like he is going to make a difference when he does come back, especially with one edge rusher already being good and moving him to the side. You can have, and then D tackle. You still have Jones, correct? I know. I don't think he retired, did he?
But Jones, he's again. I told you this before though. Jones is he's more of an outside guy. He's always been an outside guy.
Yeah.
He's not.
But you can switch him. But like I said, you can switch him to play because what's the name can play the outside too. Good, Wilson.
So Jones is going to be more your outside guy. Max Crosby is more of an outside guy. But yeah, on third downs, now that you have Wilson, it's either going to be Crosby or Wilson that will get moved inside to be that pass rusher from the inside. Yeah. At the end of the day, Wilson's going to be taking over for Jones, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying Jones, but it's the trio, right? What's his first name? I'm spacing on his first name right now, but yeah, the guy that came over from Arizona, who came from the Pats. I'm spacing on his name right now. I don't know why. But
Chandler
yeah.
Jones, right?
Who is it?
Chandler Jones.
No, it's something. It's gonna annoy me. Jones Raiders.
Anyway, real quick while you're looking that up, I will say this is that Amos was high on Wilson from the very beginning before the combine. Even I remember him bringing that name up quite a bit, and I was kind of skeptical until I actually started looking at some video of the kid, and he's a monster. I mean, I think that they did really good by getting this kid in the first round, and especially where they picked. For them to actually pick up somebody of this caliber, I think their defense is definitely going to be improved. That's for sure.
So we were talking about Chandler Jones. I apologize.
Yeah, Chandler Jones.
But yeah, so like Tyree Wilson, there were rumors that the Texans, a few of the teams, Arizona Cardinals, there was rumors that they actually liked him more than Will Anderson Jr., who was the number one prospect. But yeah, but you're talking about Tyree Wilson coming off of a surgery, it was a foot surgery. I want to say it was his right foot.
Right.
On top of that, Tyree is just really raw. He really only had one really good year of production. That was last year, but he has the physical tools. He has the body.
Yeah, he's got size. He's got strength.
You can literally. That's why I said you can put him on anywhere. Basically, he can stand up.
Yeah, he can play anywhere on the line. Exactly.
His hands are probably going to be in the dirt, ideally, but you can stand him up as well. He's just a versatile guy who I could just end up seeing being a monster. And I'll just say, I want to say he was number one or at least top 5 in pass rush rate win last season. So he has that going for him. So yeah, if he pops, he's going to be a bad dude. Put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Okay, so before we jump into our own teams, I want to ask one question, and I hope you guys actually had a chance to kind of look at the draft, or even take a look at some of the grades that some of the other online journalists had these things set up. Who do you think had the best draft, and who do you think had the worst draft?
Oh man, that's tough. The worst draft is harder than the best draft for me personally. But I do have.
Okay.
I'm very high on a few teams' draft. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
I can go with best draft for me was Houston. Houston. I know they got young players. Yes, I feel that they got the best of what they needed.
They drafted like 3 Alabama players, didn't they?
Yes. They did Bryce Young. Then they got the middle linebacker, Anderson. And then...
No, they got Stroud. Young went to Carolina.
No, sorry. Then they got Stroud. And then
they got Will Anderson, 2-0.
Yeah.
He's a linebacker.
Tuo, the middle linebacker. He traveled from Tennessee to that.
Oh, Tennessee, that's
right. Yeah. And then they got a DB also.
Yeah.
So they killed it. Like everyone said, you got literally arguably the best QB in the draft. Yes, people will say Bryce Young, I get that, but from a size standpoint, Stroud has better size. And if you look at stats, he was as good. He was as good as I can't say as good, but it was close.
It was close, bro. I mean, within like less than 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah. And again, when you can get Will Anderson Jr. at number 3, right, as far as your second, and that's your second pick. But the guys I wanted to add is Juice Scruggs. I want to say he was a 2-3 year starter at Penn State. He's an older guy, older center. He's
Yeah, I was gonna say he's offensive, right? Yeah, offensive line. Yeah.
line be the center. They have him as a starting. They gave him a starting grade. Tank Dell,
Wow.
Tank Dell. This draft was littered with smaller slot receivers, and that he's literally the definition of a smaller slot. I want to say he's like 5'9", 5'8", probably 5'8", or 5'8". But he's extremely quick, and so now all of a sudden you're giving Stroud more weapons as far as Tank Dell. I want to say they got Robert Woods in the offseason as well. They still probably need another receiver, if I'm being honest, because I know they lost Cook, right? To
Right.
I forget, did Cook Dallas Efren, or where did Cook go?
He's in Dallas.
He went to Dallas.
Exactly. So they probably still need a receiver, but like you guys said, I don't want to keep harping what you guys just said, but yeah, I do like the Texans class.
Well,
It's not my favorite though. If I had to say which class was my personal favorite, and Texans are up there for sure, but I'm actually gonna say, and I've been telling this guy at work, man, I love this class, man, and he seems a little skeptical, is the Arizona Cardinals. I actually loved the Arizona Cardinals draft class. And I'll tell you guys why. So the Cardinals had what, the third pick going into the draft, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wanted to tackle. That was their number one guy. They wanted to tackle. That was who they were going to draft. But Paris Johnson, for most teams, was probably the fifth, sixth, seventh best guy in the draft. So you're technically reaching for Johnson if you get him at pick 3, right? So what they do, if you guys remember, I want to say they ended up trading from 3 to like 10 or 11. I think it was 11 or something like that. And so they ended up gaining an extra first round pick by doing that. All right. And then, if you guys remember, they then ended up trading up. So I'll read this. I'll just read this. Arizona moved down 3 spots in the first round, essentially netting a 2024 first round pick. All right. So they got for 3 spots down, they still got their best player that they wanted, the tackle. They gained a first rounder in next year's class. All right, so they have a first rounder in next year's class, and they still got their best pick at number 6. Okay, so imagine getting your best guy and getting who we would have drafted at 3, but you get a first round pick the following year. So they have 2 first rounders next year, and we all know the Cardinals are probably going to stink anyways, right? So now all of a sudden you have 2 first round picks going into next year. Well, they drafted a guy named BJ Olaraji, and I want to say he wore the number 17 at LSU. The number 17 is historic at LSU because if you're wearing the number 17 jersey, that means you're the best defensive player, you're the leader, you're the captain. And so BJ has had that number for a few years now. So they have a lot of trust. They from everything I've heard as far as his personality goes, he's a leader. So I thought that was a really good pick. But then they got Garrett Williams at corner round 3, and he was kind of a under the radar guy, but the corner class this year, guys, was extremely deep. I think I said that a while back. And so for you to get Garrett Williams in round 3, who most would have him as normally a round 2 guy, I thought that was a good pick. But the key guy they got was Michael Wilson from Stanford, receiver at number 94. A lot of people had him as a round 2 draft grade. And I know I'm very high on PFF. PFF, he was, I want to say the guy's name is Trevor Raymer, I want to say it was. He's extremely high on Wilson. He had him as a second round grade, but Wilson could just never stay healthy. He played at Stanford, so you know he has the smarts. But yeah, he just couldn't stay healthy. Well, you get Michael Wilson at number 94, who might potentially be a second rounder. And so at the end of the day, if you're Arizona, you get 2 first round picks. You probably get the best tackle in the class for a guy, Kyler Murray, who needs protection. You get BJ Olajari, you get the pass rush you needed. And then again, you get a good outside player. You get an outside player on the offense, a good outside player on defense. So honestly, it was tough.
Didn't
but
they take that offensive lineman from Ohio State?
Paris Johnson.
Paris
Yep.
Johnson. Yeah, Johnson. Yeah. So NFL.com gave him an A, bro, and I was kind of surprised. And then until I started looking at the draft and I saw a couple of guys there, I was like, wow, that isn't actually bad.
And that's the thing. I like their players. I like the players a lot. But really what it comes down to me is that they got an extra rounder, you know? And so next year's class is way better than this year's class. You know, I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but like that from a top end talent standpoint, this year's class wasn't very deep. And so now if you're Arizona, you got a first round pick from the better class next year. So that's really why I'd have to say it's number one, not just because of the guys they drafted, but because you're able to get a two
You set it up for next year. Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
on
Were there
them.
any surprises in the draft for you guys? I mean,
Yeah,
did
I'm actually
anything stand out as far as what's that?
I
I'll
feel
say
like
go ahead, Efren.
no. I don't know if me and you are going to agree on this, but I think Will Levis was still in the second round. Like I said, to go to Tennessee, I feel like a lot of people overlooked him because of his confidence, and I think that's gonna backfire on a lot of the teams that were out there. Yes, I was big on Will Levis, but that was your quarterback. That's a quarterback. No offense to everybody else that was in the draft. That is a quarterback. That is everybody else is gonna try to run and do little things, try to get out and get hurt. He knows that he has to stay in that pocket. And in Tennessee, he has the offensive line to protect them. Of course, they had to get a new left tackle because what's his name's gone. LeJohn, what's his name? The starting left tackle that was a Pro Bowler. I think he retired.
Oh, for the Bucks.
No, for Tennessee.
Oh yeah, Taylor Lewan.
Yeah, he retired, but
Lamar. Yeah.
But I feel like they have I know they have weapons, and you're already starting with the big running back in the backfield. I feel he was still in the second round for whatever reason. But that's me. That was my surprise.
Yeah, for me,
I don't know. I remember Amos having a lot to say about Will Levis and how he underperformed, at Kentucky. And I think,
I don't think he underperformed. It's just you got to remember the teams he was going up with. He was scoring on Georgia defenses when he played, and that was the top defense in the nation. He was going against Tennessee, against all these defenses that were good, and they were putting up points. Of course,
I don't know if they weren't putting up points this past season. I'll tell you that. It's not necessarily his fault.
And that was kind of the thing is he just didn't have the talent around him to really get the job done.
It wasn't this past season because, like you said, Alan, he didn't have the talent, and that's not his fault. But he's a guy, and you see this all the time. He's a guy that trusts his arm strength way too much, and when you can blame him for that, sure, but I'll give him a little benefit of the doubt. When you're on a team that's not as talented, you're forced to force something. You know what I'm saying? So I just think he tried a little too much. He tried to get when he could have just settled for the 5-10 yard down. He would try to go for the cross route, or for the post because he wanted the big play. And so, this is something you have to learn. And to your point, Efren, I know a lot of people were a little put off by his personality, with his cockiness, whatever. But yeah, for me, I don't care about that. Not a big deal. I didn't love him as a prospect, especially like you did, Efren. But to get him in the second round, good for you. You know what I'm saying? The Bucks, Tennessee, right? Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee.
And let me say this real quick too. And Tannehill's probably the worst QB situation you have right now in the league. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 33, 34, something like that, but he's going to be making about 40-something mil a year. And so if you're Tennessee,
is he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's towards the end of his deal, obviously, but still, if you're Tennessee, you needed that QB single guy. And yes, you got a Malik Willis last year, but he was also a third rounder for a reason, right? So to me, who cares if I'm high on him or not? You get a guy who has a lot of talent in the second round. So I think I actually do like that pick for the Titans. And then, like I said, yeah, if Tannehill just completely bombs, then you got to let Levis or even Malik Willis. You gotta give him a shot, So I agree with you, Efren. I actually do like that pick for them just because it was in the second round. But for me, my biggest surprise, Alan, is the guy I've been telling you a while back. Remember Anthony Richardson? I remember in our podcast maybe a few months ago. He was a second round guy most of the year, and I remember telling you, man, they're putting this guy in first round mocks, and we see that the Colts. They drafted him at number 4, So to me, I would say that's probably the biggest shock. Now I know a lot of teams were high on him, so clearly a lot
even
of these
after
teams,
the combine, though.
Yes, it was after. Well, yeah, the combine is what kind of solidified him as that top 10, as that top 5 pick.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and look, man, I admit a lot of these scouts can do circles on me as far as the knowledge, but from what I've seen on film myself, there's a lot to be desired. And Alan, I know me and you, we had a slight disagreement, maybe a while back, and I hear what you were saying at the time. I think you said, because I remember his what was it? His accuracy from a stat standpoint was awful, but I remember you
Yeah.
saying something that was pretty true, like his receivers weren't the best, so they had a decent amount of drops. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was Hasselbeck. It was saying just he picked one game, and there were like 8 passes that he said that weren't his fault that they weren't caught.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You
And so,
know?
and he did have a lot of those, but I've seen so many games, Alan, where he's not watching the blitzer. He has no idea that the corner who's inching a little closer is going to blitz. And all of a sudden, he comes off the line and he's forced to throw a terrible ball that gets intercepted. You know, and so he's just extremely raw. I haven't watched all of his games, so to your point, Alan, yeah, there probably was a lot of moments where he had to force throws or maybe his receivers dropped, and the fact that there was no top floor receivers in round 1, 2, or 3 even shows he didn't have elite talent that he was working with. But you're talking about a guy who's just so raw, a guy who was in the 50s for percentage, and you're picking him top 4 pick, you know. So that's the only thing I'd say I was a little surprised about. And then lastly, I would just say I was pretty surprised, certainly with the Lions draft class. And I say that because, as we know, the running back position has been devalued, and it continuously gets devalued. Well, this year it might have changed, right? You're talking about the Falcons getting a guy named Bijan Robinson, who they said is the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley, right? And so
right.
that got picked at 8. You just don't see that with running backs. Well, what surprised me even more was Jahmyr Gibbs, right, guys? Okay, fine, you get a top 10 running back. Okay, fine, it has to be a superstar. So then, fine, Bijan Robinson. But little do we know, 4 picks later at 8 to 12, the Lions would pick Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs is a 5-star talent. He was a 5-star athlete out of high school in Alabama, but
yeah,
I wouldn't say he was the prospect of a Bijan, but the fact that the Lions picked him at number 12, an effort. We talk about this all the time, effort, right? The Lions, what did they need? What was bad about the Lions last year?
Cornerbacks.
Well, corners and their defense, right? They need defense.
Yeah, the whole defense,
yeah. But yeah, their defense was trash. And so you get a running back at number 12, and your offense was always really good. So clearly they're really high on him. He's extremely explosive. He's an extremely good running back, man. And I've heard that certain GMs had him actually higher than Bijan Robinson. But either way, I was surprised.
I can counter that on you now, because you know how they got David Montgomery this year? Well, now they got trade bait for DeAndre Swift, which they are trying to trade, and I think they're trying to bring in experienced defense for him. So I think that's what they're going to try to do. I believe that they're going to try to trade DeAndre Swift for defensive players to get experience to have, because all their defense is young. If you actually look at it, that defense is very young. It's a good defense. What?
I don't disagree that they'll probably try to trade Swift. I mean, that's just too many good bodies in the running back room, But you're not going to get that. You're not going to get more than 2 defenders for Swift. You're probably going to get one guy, if you even get one guy. And more likely, though, it's probably going to be a draft pick, right? It's going to be probably a 3rd, 4th, or 5th rounder, and that's because Swift is really talented, but he can't stay healthy. You know what I'm saying? And he plays the right position with 6 feet. So you can only get so much for him, But to my point, staying with the Lions, and I'll make this fast real quick. I was surprised to see Gibbs go at 12. They got Jack Campbell at number 18, and this middle linebacker class was pretty down as well. They weren't very deep, and most people had Jack Campbell as a not third rounder, late 2nd rounder, and they picked him at number 18. Well, in fairness to Lions, he sounds like he was the only box to box linebacker. You had a lot of guys, you guys see these nowadays, a lot of these safeties that become linebackers who are more like pass coverage guys, right? Well, Jack Campbell was that lunch box, that lunch pail guy who's just down and dirty, right? So they picked him pretty early, I thought. But their second round, they killed it. They get Sam Laporta from Iowa. Alan, you know I've been saying this for a while. I had been touting the tight end class for a while, and yeah, they probably could have gotten Max Mayer, right? Because Max Mayer went number 35, and so you could argue, hey, you could end. But I know Laporta was a top 4, top 3 tight end too. So, and I thought the 5 best tight ends in this year's class were great. At least if you took any of them in the second round, I thought you got a steal personally. So the fact that they got Laporta and number 34, and then this is probably my favorite player in the class, guys. Brian Branch from Alabama, 6 foot.
Yep.
He played slot corner last year, but he's a safety.
Didn't he run a 4.4?
Ran like a 4.4, but this is the
Yep.
key number, Alan. He had the best tackle rate in college football last year. I want to say,
Oh, did he? Okay.
but I'm going to be close though. I want to say he only missed maybe 3 tackles last year, if not 4. It was 3 or 4. Talking about a guy who's 6 foot, barely 200 pounds, playing in the SEC. Like, he doesn't miss tackles. And so they got, and people got top 15, top 20. They got him number 45. And then lastly, I'll just say this: you guys know how high I was on Hendon Hooker. For him to get
Yep.
almost in the round 30, and you were too, Alan. So for them to get him almost round 3, man, I went from being kind of questionable with the Lions draft to being like, damn, you know what, guys? You guys made up for it going round 2 and 3. So I would say all those were surprised.
And that's what I was looking at too, Amos. I was looking at this because NFL.com gave them the worst grade, a C. They gave them a C+ of anybody in the draft. And I was looking at this and I was like, I was saying the same thing you said. The tight end, he probably was a top 5 guy, but I'd have to say he was probably top 3, because this kid can catch the ball and he can block. He's not just he's not like Dalton, Kincaid, just the big receiving tight end, or like Mayer, a big blocking tight end who can't catch the ball, but he wasn't known for catching the ball. This kid can do both of those, And then Branch, I was just blown away. I think he got one of the highest DB ratings out of everybody that was picked in the draft.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah, and then to get Hooker too, it's like, come on, they did way better than a C grade, in my opinion.
I think they definitely punished them. I think for reaching
for taking Gibbs, taking Gibbs in with the first pick.
18,
Absolutely.
So I get it, and that's what. Right, but like to our point though, Alan, what they did in the second round and getting Hooker, to me, there's no way it was a C+. You got to give him at least a B, if not B+ for that.
They're pushing an A with just those 3 picks.
Oh man, oh my God! So and then the Lions quarterback right now, right? Who's Lions quarterback's name?
Goff. Jared Goff.
Jared Goff, right, from Cal. So he probably had his best season last year, man. That offense was rolling. But as we all know, his contract is super high. He's probably still a top, at best, I'm just giving a range, probably a top 10 to 15 guy, right? And so at the end of the day, whenever you have a top 10, 15 guy, you can win games, but you're always asking yourself if you can win the big one. And so to get someone like Hendon Hooker, who Goff played so good, you can't just replace Goff, but at the same time, you at least were able to get someone that's ready, that's going to be on the bench learning from him. And so if Goff gets worse, you now have Hooker, right? So I just think Hooker, being able to learn under Goff, I just think it's a great situation, a great landing spot for him, man. So I really do like what the Lions did in the later rounds.
Yeah, I do too. I was really shocked by the grade that they got. I would actually say that who was it? I wasn't real impressed with Denver's draft.
No,
picks in the first round.
Yeah, that was.
But that was it though, bro.
But they did get a killer third rounder. Guy out of Arkansas. What's his name? I gotta find him. The linebacker, bro. He's a beast. Yeah, he went to Bama. Wasn't good. He did barely play at Bama. He was a 5-star guy. Then he transferred to Arkansas.
He was good.
What was his name? Because that was the thing. They here it goes. Drew Sanders, that's what it was. Drew Sanders. So he played the linebacker position, but they had him pass rushing a lot at Arkansas. He was basically a pass rusher essentially. So sounds like he's going to try to transition to the linebacker spot. And the Broncos ended up getting him in early round 3. So, and from what I hear, he's been killing it in camp. So,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So like I've been saying, no offense to the people I believe had the worst draft, not the worst, but a bad draft. They picked up one, and this is for me, guys. I don't know if I'm wrong, but the Bears. You had all those draft picks, and of course, I understand you got your offensive tackle from Tennessee. You guys, Allen has argued with me. My boy AJ has argued with me about this.
But what? Were they
They
arguing
got
with you
that
about?
tackle from Tennessee.
Are you not high on them or what?
I'm high, but they should have got the one from Northwestern. I feel he's an all around. He was the all around, so you can put him anywhere. You can only use the Tennessee guy, the Tennessee guard, not the guard, the tackle.
Right tackle.
All he played was left tackle, right? Or right tackle. Right tackle. Yeah. Not even the best. You're not even, and you drafted him that high. You know, I know he was gonna go far, but a right tackle.
He was a top 3
9,
guy, man.
Huh?
He was a top 3 guy.
Yes, but
He's a top 3 guy. Come on.
Well, I'll say this. So basically, Efren, you're saying you don't value the right tackle. So then let me just.
I don't value the right. I value the left tackle way more, and everybody knows why.
I guess my question for you, Efren, is I agree for the most part. I don't value the right tackle very high, but when you see, and I'm not comparing him to Bijan Robinson to be clear, but when you see a running back going at number 8, right? To me, I can live with the right tackle at 10. You know what I'm saying? And I'll just say Darnell White, right? Yeah, I probably was a bigger Pierce Johnson, and then that Northwestern guy. To your point, Efren, especially because they're left tackles, and the Northwestern guy can probably play all 5 positions. Darnell Wright, if I'm being honest with you, as far as film, his film was the best I saw as far as the tackles. Watch his game versus Alabama against Will Anderson Jr., bro. Will Anderson Jr.
Shut him down.
His lunch. You know, like he's a man's man. He reminds me of, I know he's a left tackle. Reminds me of Trent Williams.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the Bears are smart and move him to left tackle and have him adjust to the left tackle position. You understand?
And maybe they try.
You never know. I think I don't know, bro. I think they actually did pretty good because they got that kid from Florida, the defensive tackle from
Florida kid's a bust.
Dexter.
That Florida kid's a bust. Don't.
You think so?
Yes, I
don't know. And then they got the bigger of the 2 running backs from Texas, that Johnson kid.
I like him. I do like him, Alan. But dude, Efren and me, hey, we all know. Listeners out there know me and Efren. We do not agree a lot, but me and Efren agree. Like that dude.
You agree on Dexter?
Yeah, that guy's a bust.
He takes you. You guys hear about this all the time. These defensive linemen that just take plays off. You know, that's literally Gervin Dexter Sr. And he's a 5-star.
When he played against Bama and Georgia, offensive lineman,
nothing to do with him.
As soon as he was beat, he gave up. As soon as he knew he was beat, he gave up the whole game. You did not hear him at all that game, and that's what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be, you know, like we talked about when Will Anderson against Tennessee. You know, he got shut down on one side, but then they put him on the other side, and he would kill, right or wrong.
He did all right. Yeah, he did all right. I can't necessarily say he killed, but I just know he got dominated on the one side.
Yeah.
But no, Gervin Dexter, he's 6'6". He has the weight. He's 5-star kid out of high school, and he just doesn't play hard at all, man. Like, he has the body, but he doesn't, like, mentally though, bro. He just he doesn't play very hard. The guy like better than him is actually Zach Pickens of South Carolina. He's more of he's smaller, but he's more of a pass rush guy. But he's probably gonna be a nose tackle, honestly. But yeah,
wasn't he already? He was already gone by the time they took him, wasn't he?
No,
he went after.
Yeah, he went after Dexter. They got Dexter at number 53. They got Pickens at number 64.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, no, it's just because we heard, and I watched this guy play. When me and Amos were talking about it, as soon as he knew we were talking, he thought I was gonna. I watched this guy play. I heard of him from college, and then I watched him play. I mean, from high school. Then I watched him play the years that he was, the rivalry against Georgia and everything. And this guy, like Dexter, is just like, man, I want to talk good things about him, but you can't. He has a frame of a football, like somebody that should be dominating. And of course, he dominated against what teams? Teams that were not that, what's it called? But when it came to somebody that was
too, though, guys, you never know. I don't know. I didn't think that it was that bad of a draft for them. To be honest
no,
with you,
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like you had all these draft picks and you want to do something with them, like Houston did. I would have thought something like the Bears would have done something like that instead of trying to get more draft picks for, well, of course for next year maybe because you're still in the rebuilding process. You got to remember that too. So that's one thing. They're not there to win right now, but I feel like they did good too if they got more draft picks. I don't know. I know they got more draft picks for next year from Philly, right? Or something like that. So that's good too. Like you were talking about Arizona doing it. The Bears did that for future picks. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I don't really see them this year like doing something, but the offensive tackle, I hope they move them, and the good running back to have it in Chicago now to help protect Justin Fields. I hope because everybody always calls him a running back, and I feel like I hope that they bulk up that offensive line as much as they can.
I think that's a good start, though. To be honest with you, I mean,
no, and Alan, just to be clear, I don't hate the Bears picks at all. The Dexter pick, I hate that pick, but other than that, though, I'm fine with their draft class. And then like everyone said, maybe they could have got a little bit more because they had the number 1 pick, right? But
right.
Pick and you end up coming out with a right tackle when you had the number 1 pick. That's why I could see Efren's point as far as, man, I would have liked them to do a little bit more. But no, I'm fine with their draft class. I just don't like Dexter.
I give it a B. A B plus the draft. The 2 picks after Dexter. The pick after Dexter was good. I respect that. But like I said, it's just that Dexter pick. It's just too. That one like
Yeah, but Alan, if we're trying to speed up a little bit, and we'll get to our teams, but I do want to give the Pittsburgh Steelers a little props. Man, they killed it. They had Broderick Jones.
They did kill it, bro. They killed it.
You get Joey Porter Jr., who most had as a first rounder, top 15 guy. You get him as the first pick. You get a Keanu Benton, who I'll come back to, but that's who I low-key wanted the Seahawks to get with their second rounder because we needed defensive line help so bad. But whatever, they get Benton at number 49. Then, Alan, I know you remember this. They got Darnell Washington, who's like a 200 defensive tackle who plays tight end. And the only reason why he fell so hard, I found out, was medicals, by the way. But people had him as a second rounder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you get Nick Herbig, number 132, who was one of the best pass rushers while he was in college. So I thought they absolutely killed it. And then, of course, I'll just say this team, I don't need to talk about them because we all know they killed it. The Eagles, right? Like, we all know the Eagles killed it. But now, with that, I'm not as jealous about Jalen Carter because, yeah, they could. Because I think it was just, if Jalen Carter ends up being a superstar, that doesn't mean he would have been a superstar with the Seahawks, right? I think the Eagles, with more teammates, with the organization, I think they were more prepared to handle a Jalen Carter. And then you get a guy named Nolan, right? You get Nolan Smith in number 30. So he has all of his people that he trusts. So I think it's a good environment for him. But that doesn't mean it would have been a good environment for everybody else, right? But yeah, you get a Tyler Steen at number 65 from Bama. He's going to be he was a right tackle, but he'll probably be a right guard forward. Sidney, they get Kelee Ringo.
They got 3 Georgia picks.
And people don't know this.
Alabama guy.
Kid from Tacoma, Washington, who moved to Arizona his junior year, and then ended up obviously going to Georgia. So he was a round 1, round 2 guy. I don't know how they got him at round 4. And then lastly, McKee, He was probably one of my favorite sleeper QBs. He was with Stanford, who I really injury depleted. Mike Wilson, the receiver I love, played. So McKee didn't have this top guy. He was an extremely accurate guy. He's 6'6". He's a 5-star guy. He's slow as dirt. Efren could probably beat him in a 40, but he's still a really good talent. But yeah, I just quickly say the Steelers. I also like the Steelers and the Eagles picks as well. But if we want to finish it with our own teams, guys, let's go to Efren first. Efren, what about the Cowboys, though, man? I know we already talked about the Raiders for KJ, but what about the Cowboys, Efren? What do you think about your draft class?
Well, first of all, I like how you bring up Nolan Smith, asshole. I was happy. I was happy after the first round. I understand why we picked up that D tackle. It's gonna bring us a lot of help. The kid from Michigan, but still, I don't. I would rather see Nolan Smith and Micah, and both sides kill instead of that D tackle from Michigan. That how many players? And I keep saying this. And of course, you guys have talked. Have tried to talk me out of it. How many defensive players, or defensive tackles, or defensive ends have been successful from Michigan in the NFL?
Who's the only defensive player to win the Heisman Trophy?
Woodson.
Right, but I'm talking about defensive tackle, defensive ends.
But we were talking about this, right? Efren, the guy from I'm spacing on his name now, but New England Patriots.
Hutchinson. The dude.
Yeah. You talked about him. You talked about Chad Hutchinson.
Juno.
No, Juno wasn't.
Judon.
The other one. He's talking about the other one.
He plays on the opposite side of Judon, and he's really good. He's like he was a total nuts.
That's true. That's true. Okay, we've had this.
And what about the kid last year?
You talking about Hudson?
That's what I said. Hudson.
Yeah.
Oh no, you said him. Okay.
Efren,
two. Hold on. Let me finish. That's two. Two.
Okay, the linebacker that the Packers have isn't bad. He's from Michigan. What's his name?
I'm talking about D tackles, and I'm talking about D tackles. And
you're talking about D tackles. Okay.
Yeah, everybody on D line.
I can do some more research later. We can get on that, but keep going as far as your Cowboys, though.
Okay, and then we got. I'll keep on going. So, after that is the tight end from Michigan. I like that tight end. He's gonna help us out. I've seen him play at Michigan. He's good. Then we got the linebacker from Texas, which is Overshawn. I love that pick. I love that pick.
That's probably my favorite pick that you guys made.
Yeah, he's good. Then we got the offensive lineman from
North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina. Good. I respect that. We got a bulk of our offensive line. He's gonna need a little work, but he'll get there. And then we got that other D tackle from South Carolina.
No, you guys got an edge from San Jose State.
Yes, the Polynesian, the Tongan from from San Jose State. I watched him play because he played against great mortar, always on it, always good, always trying to make plays, doing everything he has to do. Great player. And then we got the kid from.
So you got Eric Scott Jr., the corner from Southern Mississippi, number 178. Now we're going to the way later rounds, and
we're going to the bottom. So, but the top. So if I actually look at it, our top three picks, we're good. I gotta give him. I watched a little bit of D tackle. The only thing is the D tackle, he played good. He made plays, but also if we're talking about Dexter, the kid from the Bears, this guy had not the same. He didn't have no plays off, but he did get dominated on a couple of plays against TCU. He was getting beat by the center, that TCU center.
So that's a pretty decent comparison, honestly, with them too, because whereas Dexter would take plays off. Smith has actually pretty good motor, but you expect him to be way better and do a lot more for his because they'll tell you literally I want to say he was the most athletic defensive tackle they've had in years. So he looks like a monster. He looks like a brick wall.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, you look at his film, the consistency just isn't always there. You know,
he makes plays, but he doesn't make them often. He'll make like one play or two plays, and then he'll get beat, or he won't show up on the play that you need him to show up on. You understand? And that's what hurts. That's the consistency. Hopefully that changes. That's all I can say about that. Honestly, I gotta give our team. I'm gonna shout this out right now, and I'm gonna say it. I'm glad. Remember, I told you guys about a sleeper that I like, and of course, the unrestricted free agent, Jalen Cropper Moreno. I'm glad we picked him up. You guys are gonna watch him this year. He's a receiver. He plays the slot. He can play any position on that offensive line, and you can switch him over to defense too. He's a good. If the Cowboys want to switch him positions, trust me, that kid is gonna be something special in the NFL.
Where did that kid go to college, Efren?
He went to Fresno State.
Fresno State.
Fresno State.
Oh.
You know where great candies, Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, David Carr. You want me to keep on naming them? Kids with heart. That's what we give. We got kids with heart. But I like that draft cast. I know you guys probably have something. Hopefully, you guys pick the same way I did. I'll give them. I'm gonna have to give them a B plus, just because of that first pick. That's the only pick that kind of scares me. I hope we didn't reach too high for him, because he was a second round draft pick. I ain't gonna lie to you guys. He was, but people were saying to get him before, because you don't know, maybe somebody else would have got him before us. So
to that point too, Efren, I'm glad you actually mentioned that. So that's two folds as far as you saying he's a second rounder, and then another team would have took him. So that's actually two folds. The reason I say that is because they said this year, and I've said this before, this draft class was so down as far as not having the depth that they said that typically there's probably about 16 to 18 real first round players. Okay, this year they said there was only about 12, maybe 13, maybe 14. So it was way down. So you're right, he probably wasn't a true first rounder. But then the second to that point is because the class was down, but also there wasn't that many D linemen, right? It was extremely down, especially inside. So to that point, like, I didn't love Mozzie Smith, but the Seahawks, one of our biggest weaknesses was literally our nose tackles, our inside D line. And so I knew that there would be teams out there, not saying it's a big reach, but I kept out there that, okay, yeah, we don't necessarily love Mozzie Smith, but hey, he's probably the best nose tackle you can get. It's not a bad pick. Let's take him. You know what I'm saying? So to that point, yeah, I didn't think Mozzie, unfortunately, would be able to get to the Seahawks, and I was pretty disappointed when he was taken. Not necessarily because he's an elite, but because of just the position, because he is good. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I agree. Like he wasn't a true first rounder, but he's a guy that can quietly play 8 to 10 years for your team, and have no problem with him. You know.
Yeah, but that was me
NFL.com gave him a B plus too, bro. So you got it about right.
Alan, what about Packers, man?
Oh man, I don't even want to talk about the Packers, bro. I will say this though. I mean, when I started looking at it, I was kind of impressed because they did make 13 picks in the draft. So, they went with defense with the first pick with Van Ness from Iowa. They did kind of do their thing on the offensive side too to give Love some help. So I mean, they took Musgrave from Oregon State. They got a wide receiver from Michigan State. They got a wide receiver from Virginia, a wide receiver from Charlotte. They took tight end from South Dakota along with Musgrave. They even drafted a quarterback, which was kind of surprising. Who'd they take? the kid from Penn State, Sean Clifford.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I was impressed.
I was just gonna say, sorry,
What
Efren.
was that?
Sean, what's your boy's kryptonite, by the way? Levis's kryptonite, Sean Clifford.
No,
Oh, really?
I
yeah.
said okay. So Alan, I said that because they both were at Penn State together, right? And Clifford won the job, so that's why
Oh,
Levis.
oh, that's why he left.
Yep. Sorry to cut you off. I just had to say that.
Okay. Okay. No, so I mean, I remember him. Didn't he? He won a couple of games for them at the end of some games with some throws. So I was kind of surprised that they actually took a quarterback. But like overall, they get NFL.com gave them an A. My thing is with them is that they always, they're always they. So this is what they took on the defensive side. They took 5 players. On the offensive side, they took 7, and then one special teams guy. They took a kicker from Auburn, and so they took 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, a quarterback, and a running back. And you know that they're always going to hit with somebody, and it's usually on the defensive side of the ball. So they got a couple of there's a cornerback from Kentucky, Valentine, and then they got a safety out of Iowa State, Johnson. And I'm thinking that they usually do pretty well, picking defensive backfield. So one of those 2 might hit. They got an edge guy from Auburn, Wooden. He did play in the SEC. You never know. He might prove to be adequate, and then hopefully Van Ness will do something on the defensive, as a defensive end out of Iowa. I mean, as a first round pick, I'm hoping that he, can do something. But to be honest with you, I don't see this as a high grade draft pick, even though pretty much everybody gave him an A in the draft, and it might be just because they got 13 picks in the draft. I don't know, but a lot of these kids I wasn't very familiar with, to be honest with you, and I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens, I guess.
So I think I'm probably a lot more higher in your class than you are, and I kind of do see the high grade. So the one thing I would say is the negative is that you guys probably don't have a lot of guys who are day one guys, day one impact guys, right? And I think that's probably the biggest negative as far as this class. But as far as long-term potential, I'm really high on it. And really the reason being, and obviously I'll get to Lucas Van Ness, the number 1 guy, in a second. But the tight ends, right? You get Luke Musgrave and you get Tucker Kraft. So Musgrave, most people had Musgrave as probably the 4th or 5th best tight end. And I saw Tucker Kraft as usually the number 6. Like literally, he was literally the one guy outside the top 5 consistently. But we're talking about a guy who played at South Dakota State, so he didn't have the fanfare, he didn't have the everything.
Right.
So imagine him in a bigger offense, a bigger program. So to me, I'm extremely high in Kraft. I mean, I'm telling you, he's going to be a good starting tight end. So he's not even your best tight end. You got Musgrave, right? So to me, you really hit it as far as getting those tight ends. And Jaden Reed, he's a good slot receiver. You know what I'm saying? I don't love him necessarily, but he's good, So you give him weapons. But then even going to Carl Brooks, who I don't expect very many people to be aware of, people don't know he was actually a tight end at Bowling Green, and then they converted him to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he has, because of that, he's fast as shit. He's athletic as hell. And he has good agility, good mobility, but he doesn't have a lot of experience playing the position. So he's just a guy you could, he could play a lot of different positions on the defensive line. So I'm decently high.
Does he have the body to be on the defensive line, though? Does he have?
Yeah.
I mean, is he?
Yeah, I want to say he's 6. I want to say he's 6'5". Let me instead of guessing, I'm pretty sure he's 6'5", but let me actually hit his link, so I'm not wrong and I'm not just guessing. But I want to say he's like 6'4", 6'5". While it loads, I'll also say this about Lucas Van Ness too. So that's obviously your number 1 pick, 13 overall. Think about Lucas Van Ness though, and I think that he really does highlight your class, Alan, because again, he's probably not that day 1 guy, but his potential is just it's so high, and the reason being is he's
Is
21
it?
years
He didn't even start at Iowa, though.
and I think that's why some people like you, fair enough too, right? People like you and others are going to be skeptical, right? It's like, wait, how can you be a star in the NFL, right? When you weren't even
Right.
a starter in college. By the way, Carl Brooks is 6'3" here. So
But you gotta,
Okay.
but you gotta remember about that. Sorry for interrupting, but you gotta remember all those we're talking about Iowa players, right? They fit the system wherever they go. So like a lot of like the kid from that plays at Buffalo right now, SB honors. He was a he was a DN.
yeah.
Huh?
I think
What? Yeah, he fit the system in Buffalo. Great, like he does is what he has to do. But like I said, I feel like the reason that you guys got these players is because they fit the system of where they're going. I don't think they're going to be star players there. I just feel that they're going to be good players that are going to make plays, but it's going to help your defense out.
But that's my thing, guys. Is that we're going to get guys that can fit into the system, but they're not going to be guys that are going to take us over the top. And that's kind of what we've done defensively for the last decade, is just taking guys that are going to fit the system. And I think that we should be shooting more for the moon and some of these, especially with the first pick of the draft. You know,
see, that's what they were doing, Alan. Like Lucas Van Ness, at that point, they need a pass rusher, and when you lose Tyree Wilson, when you lose Wilson and Will Anderson Jr., there was a decent drop off to the next guy, and so Lucas Van Ness, he has high potential, but he's
Carter
also
was still there.
who was
Carter was still there. Carter.
Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
No, Jalen Carter got took at number 10. Or sorry, he got picked at
That's
number.
right. He did, didn't he? He did go at number 10, didn't he? I'm sorry.
So I'm looking at it right now. In fact, literally if the best pass rusher was probably Will McDonald from Iowa State, who the Jets got number 15. If we're talking about just straight speed on the outside, but remember, a lot of people said the Jets reached on Will McDonald because he was a projected late first rounder, even second rounder. So the Jets thought they.
Right.
I mean, when you get to that point, you're kind of opinions vary, you know. But with Lucas Van Ness, what sets him apart from a guy like Will McDonald? Will McDonald is 245, 255, 260. He's strictly an outside guy. Lucas Van Ness, he's just like Wilson, Tyree Wilson. He's a guy you can put on the outside, you can put on the inside. And they actually say, if you look at his film, he actually performed a lot better on the inside, and he's not a huge guy. So I think what they're thinking is going to happen, probably not. They look at him as like a JJ Watt type, a guy who has a high motor, an extremely high motor, an extremely high ceiling. And look, if you can give me good production on the outside, but great production inside, hell yeah, because as you guys both know, it's the pass rush position on the inside is one of the hardest things to find in the league. There's just not that many of them, you know. Yeah, there's some, but way easier to find the outside pass rusher than a guy who can have that 6, 7, 8 sack potential on the inside. And I do believe Van Ness has that potential. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, to Efren's point, Iowa is a machine when it comes to producing inside offensive linemen, defensive linemen. It's a factory out there. You know, they get big bodies and they produce them so well. And so I wouldn't love it, but I wouldn't be freaked out about Lucas Van Ness not starting, because the guys he was behind were senior guys who had been in the program for a while. From what I also hear too, the coach at Iowa, he's that coach, that typical coach we see a lot, that plays the seniors, you know, that plays the juniors. And Van Ness was only a redshirt sophomore, you know, so he didn't really have a lot of experience. And so the fact that they drafted him at number 13 for that little experience, they're really high on him, Alan. So I get it. He didn't have like the elite stats, and maybe he's probably not that day one guy, like I said earlier. But man, I'm telling you though, Alan, from a potential standpoint, your class is brimmed with potential, and I personally would be pretty happy if I was you, Alan. But
well, I hope so, man. I'll be honest with you. I hope so. I mean, just looking, you know, just the little research that I did do, I didn't. I don't know. I mean, you talking about um, what's his face from Houston? That makes me feel a little bit better about it. Maybe he can, maybe he can grow into something special. I don't know, but I just from what I read and stuff, it was just like, wow, you really were reaching at number 17 for this kid. I thought.
Yeah, it
But
was.
now,
Yeah.
but now we're gonna go on to the saddest team in the NFL, the Seahawks. I mean,
Are we
Seahawks.
going to talk about the Commanders?
Oh,
Who's the Commander fan?
now none of us here.
Thank God none of us are Commander fans.
Oh, I think Amos is. That's why he has the W for Washington D.C.
This guy.
Okay.
That's good. You already know the real W, what that stands for, Efren, all right? It's what
Loser.
it's what Washington D.C. named their city for, after University of Washington. Come on, we all know this. Duh. Don't you know your history, Efren? Man, you're from the West Coast, bro. Anyways, as far as the Seahawks, I really
He's
like.
also a Fresno State fan too, bro. So I mean, come on.
But
Hey,
there's a reason why we
who beat
talk
Fresno
about
State last year? Hey, who did Fresno State beat last year from the Pac-12? Some team from UCLA. Who?
Bro, UCLA ain't had a team in who knows how long since Troy
Beat
Aikman was
Fresno
there. So
State,
shush.
baby.
So
Get it
shush. So shush. You're talking about you're giving your team too much credit for beating a Pac-12 team that hasn't been good in 30 years.
Oh, now they're no good. All of a sudden, they're no good.
Come on. Even I know that. Even I know that as a UCLA fan. We might produce a couple of draft picks every year, but that team sucks. Come
Go
on.
ahead,
Man.
Amos.
All right. So as far as the Seahawks draft goes, I actually watched this draft with Alan, with Efren, and a few of our buddies from work. And going into it, ideally, I wanted Will Anderson Jr. I thought Will Anderson Jr. was the best, safest guy in the class. And while our pass rush from the outside was good, we needed someone great. And so that's who I had as far as my eye. But I figured we probably wouldn't get to him. He probably wouldn't, land that spot that far. I also thought the Seahawks might be tempted with Jalen Carter, but man, at the end of the day, I think in the long term, I think it was a good decision for us to not take him. I just think there's just too much question marks for him. And if you're drafting at number 5, you need a can't miss guy, a can't miss prospect. And so enter Devin Witherspoon. And if you guys saw, he kind of came out of nowhere this year. He was probably the most physical corner we had last year. But if you look at his highlights are insane. Just nothing but brutal tackles after brutal tackles. Only 6 foot, so he just throws his body at people. Reminds me of a lot of Jamal Adams as a corner. And so I think my only fear with him maybe going forward is, you keep throwing your body like Jamal Adams does, you could potentially run into injury. But as far as impact standpoint, though, Witherspoon's going to be that guy. I've seen a lot of things where a lot of people have him as maybe the leading defensive player of the year candidate. And I think that's going to be hard because we see a lot of corners win defensive rookie of the year, other than obviously you had Sauce Gardner last year. But I mean, look, Sauce had everything going for him. He was really good, no doubt. But I heard this and I believe it. When your name is Sauce, the hype is ridiculous. The hype was ridiculous as is. He was a top 10, what was he, top 5, maybe top 6 pick last year? Don't quote me, but I know he was the top. I want to say number 4, maybe. He might have went number 4. And then, of course, he had the New York media. So he had the hype. That definitely helped. But typically, you don't see corners get defensive rookie of the years. Well, I think Witherspoon has as good a shot as anybody to get the rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year this year. So I'm high on that. Jackson Smith and Jigba. So anybody that watched Seahawks will tell you last year they only had, and that's actually been going on for a while now, they've only had Lockett and DK Metcalf. They're not extremely deep with receivers. They had drafted a kid, Eskridge, right? And they got Eskridge in the second round maybe 3 years ago, and he's been riddled with injuries. He hasn't been very productive when he has played. And so they needed a guy that they could give the ball to in the slot. You can give Gino an easy out man. And so enter Njigba. And Njigba, if you guys ever saw him 2 years ago, he's notable for that 2 years ago performance versus Utah in the Rose Bowl, where he had I want to say he had 200 something yards. He broke a record. He had a shit ton of catches, and he had the guy from the Saints. He had the guy from the Jets, the elite receivers. He still had them, the first rounders the year before, on that team. So that was him doing that with future first round picks on his team that he was competing with. So he's always been a superstar production wise. I think he's just going to be that guy that Gino really needed. So I'm very happy. If you're the Seahawks, you can argue that you got the best defensive back and you got the best receiver in this class. So I'm very high on that. And then going into the second round, we got a guy named Derek Hall from Auburn. His story is really phenomenal. If you guys don't know, I'll just quickly say it real quick. Basically, the doctors gave his mom not even a 0% chance at him surviving after he was given birth. Basically, he was extremely small. I'm not going to give you the number because I don't remember the number, but his size-wise, he didn't have any chance basically at surviving. Well, his mom refused to give up on him and gave him a chance, and here we are 22 years later, and he's a second round pick. So his story is remarkable. He's a high motor. I know Efren said this about someone else earlier, but he's a high motor guy. And the thing that gets me really happy about it is I just got done telling you guys this class wasn't deep with first rounders. Well, Pete Carroll and John Snyder, they've always been pretty honest with their draft grades. And they actually said they had Derek Hall as a first rounder. So that gets me excited to know that they drafted 3 first rounders that they had draft grades for, So I wasn't super excited about Derek Hall, but the more I see him, the more I've watched his tape. And then, like I said, with the Seahawks have a first round grade on him, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So that's 3 first rounders that we theoretically added. And then Alan knows this guy a lot, Zach Charbonnet. I had him actually as my 3rd or 4th best running back entering this draft class. I didn't really think the Seahawks would draft him, but I should have known because that's what the Seahawks do. They love them some running backs. Whether it was
yeah, they do.
Yeah, whether it was Charbonnet, whether it was Walker from the year before, whether it was Christine Michael, who they took maybe 5-6 years ago. That was when they had Marshawn Lynch. They love them some running backs because they run the ball so much. And they didn't have a lot of depth behind Walker. So I guess it makes sense for Charbonnet to be able to come in right away. And some people believe Charbonnet is so good to where it's going to be a 50-50 or eventually that he can take over for Walker. I don't know, but either way, I think we have a good 1-2 punch. And then lastly, they ended up drafting, a guard. They got a defensive tackle, a DN, and they got a center. So they definitely went with the hog mollies at the end. They got a lot of beef, which we need. I think Efren would agree with me. That's probably still our biggest weakness going forward is the defensive line. Not from a pass rush standpoint, but from a run defense standpoint. That's what gets me very nervous still. They got Cameron Young, a nose tackle in round 4. They even told him, hey, Cameron Young, keep eating. I think he was like 303 or something like that, and they told him, hey, we want you to keep eating. We want you to show up to camp as heavy as it gets because they want him to be that nose tackle. So
I feel it's going to help you guys out too, the Seahawks. You guys got a good rush linebacker, Michael Bush, this year from Pittsburgh. Remember?
Yeah.
I feel I feel like he's a good run stopper. I don't know too much about covering, but I know run stopper. I think that's what's going to help your interior defense because he does play middle linebacker. So
that was supposed to be his thing coming in. Like you said, you don't know about his pass coverage. Well, coming in, he was fast as heck, one of the fastest middle linebackers as far as the 40 goes. But he got hurt, right? So he's been dealing with injuries with the Steelers. So yeah, he was supposed to be a good pass coverage, but because of his injuries, I don't know how good he will hold up. As long as he's healthy, I do think he'll give us good run defense, like to your point. And of course, you bring in Bobby Wagner, right? So that's regardless, you're gonna have better run defense because you bring in Bobby Wagner. But the big thing is just the nose tackle, the D linemen. Can they hold up? Can they hold the blockers so that way you can get a Bobby Wagner, you can get a Bush to go through and tackle, right? So that's going to be the key. But I'll just say lastly, they drafted a guy out of Michigan in round 5, Olusegun Olowatimi. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. But he won the award for centers last year. I forget the center award, but
he's a good center.
Yeah, if you guys remember, great, go and say it. Otherwise, I can't remember best center last year. And so got him number 5. We needed a center since literally we traded Unger after, a couple years after the Super Bowl. So we've been need a center. But 5 guys. So I can't sit here and tell you guys he's going to be ready right away when all these teams passed on him, but I do think he has potential to come in, take the job eventually, and be a good leader. So end of the day, not trying to sound biased, but I am pretty happy with the Seahawks draft picks. Oh, lastly, too, good old Broncos. I want to say round 3. They didn't have a round 3 pick because they traded the round 3 pick to go later in 4. And because of that, they were able to trade with the Broncos for the Broncos round 3 pick next year. So not only did we get a pretty good draft class, we did get a round 3 from the Broncos going forward. And obviously, I've said the draft class is going to be even better next year. So we weren't the Cardinals as far as getting round 1, but we did get a little bit of ammo as far as getting an extra round 3. Who knows? Maybe they trade both thirds next year for a second, and now you get 2 seconds and a first. So either way, I'm happy with what they did. I'm ready for some football, man, but I know it's going to be a little bit of ways, but I am happy.
So let me ask you this, Amos. Do you think Smith and Jigba can stay healthy at the pro level? That was the problem this past year, and it's a hamstring, and that's something that can linger.
Right. No doubt. Hamstrings do linger, especially bad hamstrings. But honestly, other than this past season, he's always been really durable. A receiver position, I'm not usually too worried about skill guys as far as their bodies go, I'd be a little bit more worried if it was like a bigger guy, someone who wasn't as loose and someone who was, a lot bigger, more compact as far as injuries go. As far as skill guys, just the bone, just the amount of fat, I don't think it's as big of a long-term problem. But we'll see. It definitely is a concern because he was so hurt for this past season. But I think I know they've tested him out a bunch of times, and I know he tested out well. He's been healthy, so it is a little bit of a concern, but it's not long term.
I think at the pro level, he's gonna get the finest of medical experience and help that he can actually possibly get. So I don't think that'll be that big of a deal. I was just curious what you thought about it. And then with Witherspoon, do you think he'll stay at cornerback?
Yeah, no.
I see him moving over to safety and just being a beast.
I think they're keeping my cornerback. I feel like for his team, he's gonna be able to shut down one whole side of the field for the Seahawks. That's gonna help him out. That kid, I watched him play during college. Man, nobody was throwing at him, and people that did try to throw at him, I think no success. So I don't see them. Yeah, I don't see Pete Carroll moving them anywhere. I feel. Don't you guys already have a safe? Is he corner? No, you guys should have two corners that are shut down now.
No, we're actually really deep with safeties too. So we have Julian Love, who we signed with the Giants. He was actually the Giants play caller. He was the guy that called their plays for the Giants. Smart guy from Notre Dame. And he might not even start. That's only because if Jamal Adams comes back, which he should, you'll have Jamal Adams and Diggs as your safeties. And then Julian Love will probably end up being the slot corner. So he'll probably be battling with Kobe Bryant, who was pretty damn good for us last year. But I will say, Alan, I have heard of people saying like he reminds them of like Earl Thomas, and he could be a pretty good safety at the next level. But to Efren's point, man, like he was so damn good last year. If you pick someone in the top 5, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if I want to play around with their positions when you saw what he did as a corner last year. He was elite. Like, no one passed on him, man. We're talking about Ohio State. We're talking about all these, good pass-heavy teams. When Michigan was rolling, they didn't pass on him. So, I think he could do it, Alan. But, man, with him on one side, you have Woolen on the other side, man, I don't think you want to mess around with that at all.
Okay. I was just thinking that he's probably going to fill out a little more, which is probably going to slow him down a little bit. And he's so dynamic on the tackling end of the game, bro, that I could just see him being that Thomas character, position and just eating guys alive, especially at like a free safety spot and just roaming the backfield, just knocking guys out.
I don't think he was. Sorry, I don't think he was more. I know he could tackle running backs out of the backfield, but I feel like his position is quarterback. That's what I.
Well, and not to mention, Seahawks really value corners that can tackle. That's a big deal, and not just that.
No, you're right about that.
And not just that, we got killed. Like the defensive line was terrible last year, but one problem area too was the corners tackling. Like so many times receivers and runners would get the ball, they get hit, and then they keep going, And so that was a big problem, missed tackles for the Seahawks last year. So now all of a sudden you have one guy on one side, even if he gets the ball, he's going to be able to tackle and feel pretty comfortable with him, So yeah, I just had talent, but yeah, I think I would say probably corner for sure.